Welcome, friends,
to the How-To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Mark.
And I'm Uncle Dan.
And I'm Uncle Doug.
And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
That's right. Leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Things work differently now.
Never fear. That's why we're here.
We're your audio uncles. And with help from good friends and experts in all sorts of fields.
We're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, you only get one that we know of, so you'd better make the most of it.
Guys.
Hi.
We have a quorum of uncles.
We do.
That's right. A trio
One
of
more
tios.
would be too much. One less would be too few. We've hit a balance. All is well in the universe, as we will describe it in great detail today.
The only game of Fuck, Marry, Kill where everybody loses.
Just kill them all.
What a
and
show.
then marry them.
What a show. Show 81, brought to you by Dr. Pepper. Today, I'm going to talk about, how you can't trust shirts.
It's true.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about the Mormon Church's meteoric rise into the 19th century.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
They'll get there eventually. They're on their way. And I'm going to talk about workplaces, and which is funny because I don't know what those are.
Dan seldom has a workplace, but that's okay. We love him anyway. The other uncles support him. So, and we have an important announcement, don't we, Dan?
Indeed.
Oh, that's true. We haven't talked about this yet, but as the tickets are purchased, we're definitely going. We should talk about the fact that we are, the Uncles 3, all going to be meeting up in Cincinnati for this year's American Atheists Convention.
That's right.
Damn right. So that's from the 19th to the 21st, right? In
something like that.
Cincinnati.
And what's just down the road from that? Is there something nearby?
We are going to rent a car and go to the Ark Encounter on one of those days.
Doug needs new
Uncle
pants.
Doug can barely contain himself.
We're gonna go see the glorious story of Utnapishtim up close and personal.
Yes, indeed.
Through the lens of Australian idiot Ken Ham, and I cannot wait to take a sloppy shit somewhere in that ark. So
It's gonna be boring and stupid, but we're gonna have a good time
have
anyway.
a damn good time. So if you're in the Cincinnati area and that time and place, come see us.
Or surrounding, or come in, and there's still time to get tickets. There's probably still accommodations available. I haven't looked into it, but
yeah, it's a lovely hotel.
Come and meet us. We'll be just hanging out. We'll want to meet you all. So
right.
maybe you know what? Here's what I'm announcing right now.
Wait.
I have not checked in with my co-uncles on this.
Okay.
We're going to have a meetup.
Yeah,
We are going to have a How-To Heretic meetup on one of the nights. It's yet to be determined currently.
Right.
But one of the nights we're going to have a meetup where we're all going to be at the same bar.
I say we have a meetup in the cafeteria of the Ark Encounter.
We're definitely going to do that too.
Can we get on the deck? Is there a deck we can get on? No, maybe?
Yeah,
the lanai deck.
Mark's poop deck is what we'll be on.
The control tower like an aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, if you want to join us at the Ark Encounter, you certainly can. I don't know how many people we can fit in our car, but if you've got one, you can come too.
Watch our Twitter feed and our Facebook feed when we decide when we're going, and when we get that all figured out, we're going to make those announcements. But there will be a meetup as well in Cincinnati, or surrounding that time period. So watch the feeds.
Yes.
And we'll let you know about all of that.
The prophecy
in the meantime,
is coming true.
Yeah. In the meantime, hey, you guys want to do a show this week?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Hey, Uncle Doug.
Hello.
If you were native to this land,
Yeah.
and you are,
I am, technically.
but if your people were,
Right.
tell me everything that you know about what your religion would be. Anything?
It would be different.
Because I know. There you go. I know nothing.
Yeah.
But Uncle Mark is here to give us some fine native wisdom.
That's
I
right.
guess. Uncle Mark, is that right? Do you have anything to help us out with that?
I do. I think I can help you boys out with that very strangely specific question. Today I want to introduce us to somebody who's both kind of prophet and choreographer. So it's a strange job description, but I think we'll be seeing more of that in the future. So, guys, part of what we find fascinating about examining religion and the spectrum of irrational beliefs is how they're never really original, right? They're always some weird pastiche of older ideas dressed up in a new suit. And even then, they can't help but cross-pollinate with contemporary ideas in their vicinity.
Yeah,
so,
it does seem like that may be the case. It's true.
Today's story is true to form in that way, with a twist I did not expect at all when I dove into this. So
fun.
Shyamalan.
Today I want to. Yeah, it's very, very Shyamalan. It's very Manite. So today I want to talk about a character that has long fascinated me, and a guy who is in the prophecy business not far from where we live, fellas.
Ooh.
So today I'm going to introduce us to Koitse O, also known as Jack Wilson, but best known as the Northern Paiute prophet Wovoka.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's a lot of different monikers that guy has.
Yeah, he had a lot. He had a stage name and
Yeah, exactly.
he had a white man's name. So the man that would become known as Wovoka, who would later in life try to start a peaceful revolution, was born in the Smith Valley of Nevada, just south of Carson City, beautiful country.
Yeah.
In 1856. Now he was the son of a man called Tavibo, who assisted a highly regarded Northern Paiute prophet called Wadziwab, which is an awesome name.
That is, and I'm changing my name to that now. I'm now Uncle Wadziwab.
Wadziwab. At Wadziwab. So it's believed around 1870 that Wadziwab created a version of a common circle dance that would later be described as the ghost dance. This will be a detail of critical importance in just a tick.
Okay.
So, young Wovoka was training to become what the Northern Paiutes called a weather healer. So, in a harsh desert environment for a people who traditionally had a subsistence lifestyle based on fishing, hunting, and gathering pine nuts and roots, wanting to control the weather made sense, right? A late winter or an early frost might mean the difference between literal life and death.
Sure.
So, now it seems that he never said these things about himself, but the local legends around Wovoka were that he could make a block of ice fall from the sky on a summer day.
Ooh.
Which is
that sounds
awesome weapon.
dangerous.
It's super dangerous. They said he could light his pipe from the sun and that he could make icicles hang from his fingers. So at his height, this man was very highly regarded among not only his people, but a lot of other people, as we'll show. So
Yeah.
And while he was learning to follow both Wadziwab and his father into the weather healing business, he also began to work as a young ranch hand for some local white folks, David and Abigail Wilson, who were devoutly Christian Protestant, and they gave him the name Jack Wilson to use when dealing with white people, and at the same time passed on Bible stories that kind of fascinated the young spiritual student.
Have you given us a time frame for this? I don't know what time period we're in.
Yeah, so he was born in 1856.
Oh, okay.
So he was born just before the Civil War.
Okay.
And so in addition to the Bible stories that he was getting of God smiting the shit out of whole races, young Wovoka had long known that Wadziwab had prophesied a great earthquake that would swallow up all the white people but leave their shit behind. So, which is ideal, right? So it's kind of like a spiritual neutron bomb.
Yeah,
kill all the
right.
people but leave the grocery stores intact.
It's the rapture is what you're talking about.
Yeah, basically, just leave all their stuff because we can use that.
Yeah.
So just a note that over the following years, Wadziwab kept revising his prophecy as the appointed dates for the earthquake kept coming and going. So classic.
Weird.
prophetic
I've
edits,
never
right?
heard anything like that
Kind
before.
of a theme of this podcast.
Right. It's no different from so-called prophets everywhere. So pro tip for would-be prophets, do not be specific about dates, times, and places.
Oh, man. Vagary is so like your savior. You got to keep it
Vagary
vague.
is your friend. Yeah, exactly. So into a world suffused with magic, prophecy, and the stresses of white Western expansion stepped Wovoka. Now, as I mentioned above, the Northern Paiute were semi-nomadic and very dependent on the thin layer of sustenance the high Nevada desert provided. So the encroachment of white cattlemen and other settlers began to limit their range, And then typhoid and other diseases brought by us are thought to have wiped out 10% or more of the northern Paiute population. And then couple that with aggressive Christian proselytization by many groups.
Yeah.
And their traditional lifestyle was really under threat, as were their very lives. So if ever his people needed the help of a prophet to help them survive all these shocks, now was definitely the time. So the inciting incident here, in the throes of a terrible fever or some kind of trance, and it's hard to say because there's a lot of hearsay and varying versions about parts of this story.
Right.
Wovoka had a vision. He was in the presence of God and many of his ancestors, whom he observed living in abundance and in good health. So after speaking with God, he returned to consciousness and reported to his people.
The trick
He
is
said-
to die then.
I'm staying. Bye.
All you have to do is just die, and then apparently you get all the stuff you
And
want.
the lucky thing is there was a lot of that going around at the time.
Yeah.
Yes, dying was definitely
Courant.
The
a
system
buyer's
works.
market. The system works as designed. So he said it had been revealed to him that the northern Paiute must observe their traditional ways, but totally shun war and violence. They must love each other and live in peace, neither lying nor stealing. If they did this and executed a new version of the round dance according to a very specific set of instructions, they would live in health and abundance, and the white man would voluntarily and peacefully leave and go back to Europe.
His God was lying to him.
So
His God does
who
not
wouldn't?
know white folk.
They never know when to leave. So his message was received with, as you can imagine, great happiness among his people, who began practicing the 5-day trance-inducing ritual immediately in hopes of curing all of what ailed them, all that boiling down to 2 words, white people.
Yeah.
So word soon spread among other native groups who eagerly sent emissaries to hear the new prophet's word. Many took what became called the ghost dance back with them in hopes it would deliver all that was promised, especially without more bloodshed and misery. So the dance was soon being practiced peacefully all over the West and the Northwest. But as we often discuss here, fellas, once you toss a powerful, magical idea out into the ocean, you have no idea where it will wash up and what somebody else is going to do with it.
Yeah.
So now, one of the groups of emissaries that crossed Utah to visit Wovoka were a group of Lakota Sioux from the plains. And many listeners will know they had a long-running war with the U.S. government and had forced Washington to the negotiating table and gotten about as good a treaty as could be expected at the time. They actually beat the United States, basically, right? And sued to kind of keep essentially the Dakotas as their own.
Yeah, I mean, they won a battle. We won the war, though.
Right. Yeah. We had certain advantages, I guess. But, well, it will come as no surprise that Washington had, of course, broken that treaty, forcing the wide-ranging Lakota into smaller and smaller parcels, demanding that they learn to farm, which they had no idea how to do, forcing their children into the horrendous and Christianizing boarding school programs, et cetera, et cetera. Couple that with, in recent years, the buffalo population of the Midwest had been driven to the edge of extinction. Rations to the new and struggling farmers had been cut by hateful bigots in the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And years of drought had the Lakota and the surrounding people totally on the brink. So they were in the market for solutions, right?
Yeah.
So anyone who knows a little about the history of the Sioux people knows that they were never going to go down without a fight. So they eagerly wanted the magic Wovoka promised that the ghost dance would deliver, but were willing to back up the retreat of the white people by force if necessary.
Right.
So the Lakota took it home with them and began performing the ritual. This spooked the U.S. government officials in charge of the area, who knew the Lakota were already seething from all the bullshit they'd been forced to put up with and the endless broken promises they fought so hard to secure. So the dance was seen as a prelude to war, and in this one instance, they were not wrong. So 2 of the Lakota leaders that had traveled to Nevada were Kicking Bear and Short Bull, and they believed the ghost dance, along with the ghost shirt, a special rawhide shirt, would make them invincible in battle. A little more on that later.
Wow,
Sadly,
it's funny when a peace dance just suddenly they just decide it's not that anymore. This is an invincibility dance, and fuck you.
Yeah. That's exactly what happened with the electric slide in the 80s.
It just, who knew it was going to go so wrong? My God, if we could have that day back. So sadly, they wouldn't have long to find out that they were mistaken. So on December 29th, 1890, fighting broke out between the U.S. cavalry and a small band of Lakota Sioux under Chief Spotted Elk when a deaf Lakota warrior didn't understand an order to surrender his gun. And when it was over, 153, mostly women and children, were dead, and a huge number missing and wounded in the panic.
Jesus.
And that's Wounded Knee, right? So that's all terrible, and one of the most infamous days in the terrible history of the U.S. and the native people that were here first.
You know what's
But
sad
leaving
is
that for a minute.
What's sad is that I didn't even recognize that you were describing Wounded Knee because there are so many instances like that.
Right.
That I was just like, oh, it's just another one. So, at least that one got famous.
So that was Wounded Knee, right? Which is horrendous. So leaving Wounded Knee aside for a second, I want to get back to Wovoka, where he was and what influences contributed to this terrible event at Wounded Knee. To be clear, none of this is Wovoka's fault directly, right? He wanted a peaceful revolution.
He just wanted to create. He just wanted to dance.
Mm-hmm. He just wanted to. He's like Billy Elliot.
Yeah,
You just can't repress it. So the way into that discussion is the ghost shirt worn by so many of the Lakota killed that day. Wovoka was a northern Paiute in north-central Nevada, or, as our Mormon friends would call him in the most reductive, insultingly ahistorical way possible, a Lamanite. And, as most listeners know, Mormons believe all native people of the Americas are descended from a small band of Jews that came to these empty continents a few thousand years ago and eventually forgot how to be good Jews, turned brown as a result of their wickedness, and forgot how to speak Hebrew. So Wovoka was well within the proximity of the Western Mormon Empire Brigham Young was attempting to install in a giant chunk of the Central West. The native people, or Lamanites, I will always put quotes around that, were of special interest to the Mormons, and missionaries were sent to every tribe, right?
Yeah.
In fact, the rumors of a Lamanite prophet was of extreme interest to many Mormons, many of whom found themselves sitting in a circle and listening to Wovoka himself describe his prophecies. So,
Okay.
I think in the Book of Mormon, there's some call forward to a possible Lamanite prophet in the future or something. I don't know. But it seems like he tickled that nerve, right?
Yeah. So you can see why people who believe that like the Lord's people eventually evolved into these groups would then also be like, hey, wait, is it possible that the Lord is actually talking to them? Maybe.
Right.
Who knows?
Maybe.
No.
I mean, if you take Mormons at their word, they believe these people were a direct connection to the Holy Land, right?
Yeah.
Like these people are Jews, are just fallen lapsed Jews. So anyway, and also remember that in the Plains tribes, like the Lakota, crossed through the Mormon regions that would become Utah, Colorado, Idaho, etc., to hear Wovoka's message. Now, while there is some disagreement, most hotly disputed by Mormon apologist scholars, it was originally posited by anthropologist James Mooney, a man who met and interviewed Wovoka himself, that the origin of the ghost shirt lies very close to home for us fellas.
Uh-oh.
The Mormon sacred garments.
I love it.
my God.
So-called magic
love it.
underwear, which we fully discussed in episode 28. And I just listened to that the other day. It was very funny. But this isn't so funny. So if you consider the stresses these people were under, literally facing the extinction of their civilizations, and that they would travel to a distant Messiah in hopes of gaining his magic to save themselves, what sort of magic would they turn down if the survival of their people was at stake, right? And on top of all that, remember there was a lot of Mormon presence in the Plain States as well, where the Sioux were from, so Winter Quarters and Council Bluffs
Right.
being Mormon outposts in the Midwest. With everyone in the story, involved in the story long dead, we'll never know for sure, but there is seriously strong circumstantial evidence for this being the case. So I didn't know this when I dug into this story, that there was this connection, and so it kind of blew my socks off, but it's an eerie echo of a terrible past into our Mormon present. This whole story is a study in how irrational ideas transmit and mutate, like how a dream of a peaceful change ends up with 153 murdered people in the snow, and how maybe the bullet-riddled shirts with magic markings on them were the result of just another weird lie out of the head of a dirt farmer from New York who wanted to be president and marry all the 14-year-old girls he could, who in his final moments was surely startled to find out his own magic shirt was also very much not bulletproof. Really makes you think. So that's pretty much the story. Wovoka died an old man in Nevada in 1932.
Wow.
His revolution never happened. The shirts didn't work. The dance didn't work. White people are all still here. So it's a fun story.
So believe your prophets. I think that's the
Follow the prophet.
Right.
if there's a moral to the story, it's definitely that. And also, rawhide is not a material for clothing.
Yeah, but they looked way cooler than garments, so they had that going.
There is that. There is that.
Wow.
So that's it, fellas. Happy Wovoka Day.
Indeed. All right. Well, I guess we'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Moving on.
Moving on.
Hey, Uncle Mark.
Yeah.
I understand. Now, this is just a rumor, and I don't want to, and it's a very dirty, nasty rumor, but I heard through the grapevine that you
All right.
are
Guilty as charged.
I heard that you were a gay. Is that true?
Oh,
Could that be true?
Oh, my God. What will my wife think? I'll have to tell you that story another time. But yes, it's true.
Laura doesn't listen to the show.
Yeah, don't worry about it. We haven't told her about it.
It's true.
We all grew up in a religion that is traditionally not okay with that.
Uh-huh.
I would say it leans a little to the right of not okay with that. Right?
Yeah.
Ferociously anti that.
Right, depending on who you talk to and what moment in history you talk to them.
Right.
Because there have been these sort of dabbles into no, we're totally cool about it. We just, it's not us, it's the Lord. We can't help it.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Well, and as we'll discuss now, the attitude of the church towards the gays hasn't necessarily changed that much, but their attitude towards another population has improved? Question mark.
Yeah,
So-
that's a big question mark.
Yeah. So something happened this last week in the Mormon church that has shocked the Mormon and ex-Mormon communities and ignited quite a debate online, and certainly at very uncomfortable dinner tables across Mormondom.
Yeah.
It was announced earlier this week in preparation for this weekend's general conference that the Mormon church was basically reversing a divinely mandated policy that took effect all the way back in November of 2015. So
Yeah, that long ago time.
way back when, sepia-toned better
Right,
times.
yeah, exactly. Life was a daguerreotype.
Yes, when kids played hoop and stick. Essentially, the Mormon church will no longer take out its 15th century disgust with gays and lesbians on innocent children.
Hooray!
Hooray! And if you think I'm being hyperbolic about that policy, as we'll discuss, I am not. And as what had better not come as a surprise to our listeners, your uncles have something to say about this.
Wow, brace yourself, everybody. This is going to be shocking.
We have an opinion about something Mormon.
Breaking news.
So first, let's start with how we got into this particular pool of bloodstained quicksand. The Mormon Church has been at the vanguard of fighting against same-sex marriage and indeed all LGBTQ issues going back to its origins, or oranges.
That was a Trump reference for
welcome.
those of you who don't get it. Yeah.
For example, and Uncle Mark, having grown up in the religion when it was far more homophobic than it is today, can certainly speak
outwardly
to this.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Precisely.
demonstrably.
Now the hatred is at least cloaked in a smile.
Yes,
in
exactly.
love.
Back in 1995, for example, the Utah legislature passed a bill, the first in the nation, that banned Utah from recognizing same-sex marriages performed in other states or countries. Then in 2004, voters of this state overwhelmingly passed an amendment to the Constitution that defined marriage as a legal union between a man and a woman.
Yay.
Of course, we all remember in 2008, the Mormon Church went all in on backing Prop 8 in California, which outlawed same-sex marriage there.
Yeah.
Going so far as to have statements read from the pulpit to Mormons in California to donate their time and money to this political cause.
People were emptying out their retirement accounts.
That's right.
To to stop the gays from marrying
In California.
Yeah.
And remember too that they did have the public face of the church doing that, but they also had a lot of black ops. Like that's been, there's all those leaked tapes of Mormon leadership saying set up front groups, don't let it be associated with us, pour money into them.
Right.
So it was shitty. It was shitty in the front door, shitty in the back door.
That's right. And although quickly struck down and now utterly moot, Prop 8 caused massive damage to families and communities in California. Basically those were very dark days. So then in 2013, 3 same-sex couples sued Utah in district court over the state's refusal to recognize same-sex marriages. The state argued that there was nothing wrong with enforcing the notion that marriage was for the express purpose of having kids.
Right.
No shit. That's what they argued.
Yeah.
The plaintiffs argued that this was all based on religious bullshit, and the plaintiffs won.
Hurrah.
Yes.
In June of 2014, the 10th Circuit Court upheld the district court. Then on October 6, 2014, the U.S. Supreme Court refused an appeal from Utah's Palpatinian Mormon overlords, effectively legalizing same-sex marriage in Utah. So, Uncle Mark, I don't know if you want to talk about that day in your memory. I certainly remember it being one of my fondest memories.
Yeah, so that was at 4:00 on a Friday night. I didn't realize I was going to be married at 7:00 on that Friday night. So I was much like a child bride. I was surprised by my marriage, but it was crazy. And Doug was with us, and we ran to the courthouse to see if we could get in line and be part of this history. And then, of course, we ran to the wrong courthouse, so we ran to the right one, and it was crazy, and there were hundreds of people in line, and it was hopeful and frightening, and we thought that the hammer was going to come down at any second, right? There were all these sheriffs there, and we're like, well, here comes the mace.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
And the state, because they're stupid, were caught so flat-footed. There was nothing in the pipeline as far as a request for a stay. So I think what was it?
Which was a standard thing. Like everybody knows if you're doing a court case like this, what you do is in the initial filing, you file for a stay and so that people can't just run off and get married while the courts are still deciding the thing, while the appeals still happen.
Right, but that's not what Judge Shelby did in this case. So the marriages were effective immediately.
Right,
and it was the Friday before Christmas, and it was fantastic and wonderful. And we went, we started getting out on social media, and our random friends started showing up. And the mayor of Salt Lake married me and my husband, and he was wearing the most obnoxious Christmas sweater you've ever seen. And that picture of our particular wedding and the mayor ended up on the front page of the local newspaper that Sunday. So it was quite a thing, and it was an amazing thing to be part of.
And it was, I remember, there were so many couples in line. There was, I don't know if you remember, Mark, there was that elderly lesbian couple, and one of the two was clearly in a bad way.
Yeah.
There to get married. Like, how could they have ever thought that they were going to get legally married in the state of fucking Utah?
Yeah, and one of them looked like she had been gotten out of her sick bed. Like she was not in good shape, in sweats and a t-shirt and a walker and an oxygen tank.
That's right.
And, but this is the casual cruelty of religion. And when it doesn't give a fuck about the woman in her deathbed who has no legal protection, her partnership with the person she loves is not formally recognized, so they're legal strangers.
That's
right.
Yeah.
The cruelty of that.
And that woman, for all we know, could have been estranged from her family, not wanted to see them ever again, and yet if she had died, her partner of however many years would have had no say, while her family could have just swooped in and just done what they wanted with her, with her stuff, with all that stuff.
Yeah, so, and that's why that's the huge motivation behind why I got married to my husband. Is because my family, who I've been estranged from 20 years, would suddenly be in charge if I became incapacitated, and they would not hesitate to completely erase the life I've made for myself.
The wake would have been at the Cracker Barrel. We all know it.
At Chuckarama. So
that was
we're laughing about it, but it's really fucking sick, and that happened to people.
And that was a great day for all of us. Of course, it was not a very good day for the people who found that to be abhorrent or apostasy or whatever. Anyway, then the worst possible thing ever happened in June of 2015, when the U.S. Supreme Court struck down any and all bans on gay marriage from sea to shining sea, much to the consternation of the very first class of Slytherin that runs the Mormon Church, their mini-kingdom falls within those borders. So having lost on this issue at every level and in every institutional forum in this country, and now facing the terrifying prospect that same-sex marriage was not only fully legal, but there wasn't fuck all he could do about it, LDS president and ghost of Goebbels' past, Thomas S. Monson, decided to try a new strategy. So in November of 2015, this is a mere 6 months after same-sex marriage became legal, Monson, then 88 years old,
and not of his of a right mind.
no, and
He had a head
not at
full
all.
of pudding at that
That's
point.
right.
Right, literally, like the rumor mill, and the church never acknowledged this, but the rumor mill had it that he was not competent.
At that time, any public appearance of him looked more like Weekend at Bernie's than anything else.
Right.
Anyway, he instituted this raft of policies that, among other things, added same-sex marriage to the list of sins that met the level of apostasy. That policy went on to say, and this is so, bear with me. This policy went on to say that the children of same-sex or same-gendered, as they called it, partnerships, whether married or not, may not receive a naming blessing. This was regardless of whether the child was from a previous relationship or adopted, and regardless of whether the birth parents or adopted parents gave consent. Furthermore, the children of these unholy unions were banned from baptism, confirmation, or any other level of participation in the religion, including missionary work, without the express consent of the first presidency.
That means this would have to go to literally the highest three guys in the whole church, which you can't get to.
No.
You can't. There's no way anybody's going to get to them.
No. How would you go about it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a chain of command so thick, it's you're wading through molasses to even get to your stake president, let alone all the way up to the very tippity top.
Right.
Now,
And that is it is punishing children who have no fucking say in how their parents are constituted. Right? If your parent is a murderer, you can be baptized.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
If your parent is in jail for the Holocaust, you can be baptized. Right?
Now there are some of our listeners who might be saying, this is good, right? We want fewer people baptized into this church.
Right.
But the problem is that, if you've got one, especially if they live in Utah, and you've got one LDS parent and one parent who has since come out of the closet, maybe and gotten married, that kid can't participate in the things that almost all of their family
And friends.
values as the highest order of things. This kid is just ostracized.
Well, and if you are a young Mormon and you may not have you're not 18 yet, so you can't stop going if you don't want to. There are certain rituals in the Mormon Church that if you don't participate in are scandalous, like taking the sacrament. So there is a way out of this for some kids. When they turn 18, they have to turn 18. They can petition to have these rituals performed and gain entrance into the church. But they had to meet certain criteria, and this is real. I'm not making this up. These children had to commit to live Mormon doctrine. They had to specifically disavow the practice of same-gender cohabitation and marriage, and could not live with either or both of their parents that may have been in such a relationship.
You had to denounce your parents.
Yeah, you had to denounce their lifestyle, and you had to denounce them as being evil.
And you couldn't live with them anymore. You had to move the fuck out.
Right.
So if the daughter of a same-sex couple wanted to serve a mission, she had to convince her adult male stake president that she was sufficiently disgusted by her parents' sinfulness, disavow their existence, all the while describing in detail how she might have felt funny in the shower the other day.
Right.
This is highly problematic. Not only does this fly in the face of Mormonism's second article of faith, which reads, "We believe that all men will be punished for their own sins and not for Adam's transgression," but it also flies in the face of any sense of decency, decorum, or fucking human compassion.
Right. It's Monson looked at North Korea and how families are torn apart by the government there and said, yes, let's get some of that over here.
Yeah. And we'll never know if this sprang directly from the mind of Monson, who, as we mentioned a second ago, was addled, to say the least, or if this was a collective gross out by the rest of the assembled Skeksis. Right. But, I think let's take it as a given that Monson wasn't alone in thinking that butt stuff was evil. So
Right.
here, for example, is now prophet, but then Apostle Russell M. Nelson in February of 2016.
A medical
Mere
doctor.
Yeah, that's right. Mere months after this policy was announced, in the full light of what a PR disaster it turned out to be, Nelson was dispatched to defend the policy at BYU, Hawaii, presumably because President Monson was busy translating it into German, and said the following, quote, "Each of us during that sacred moment felt a spiritual confirmation. You may not always understand every declaration of a living prophet," he added, "but when you know a prophet is a prophet, you can approach the Lord in humility and faith and ask for your own witness about whatever the prophet has proclaimed."
Yeah, this is where they start digging.
Yeah.
And keep digging and digging and digging. The problem that it's a double-edged sword, this whole living prophet with a direct line to God thing.
Yeah.
Because because what's nice if you're the prophet is that you can say any goddamn thing you want and can't nobody say no.
That's right.
Nobody gets to say, let's put this to a vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
However, on the other side, if you do that, if you go all in, there may be
fucked.
a problem down the
Yeah.
road.
Yeah.
You're fucked because that
Especially
cannot,
what you-
it can never
yeah.
not be true.
Yeah.
Right.
Or can it?
Yeah.
Doug, can it not be true?
Can it not be
Is
true?
it possible?
It's let's talk about that. But before we get to that, there's another foreseeable consequence of this policy that is worth mentioning. Not just the teen suicide, not just the tearing apart of families. This specifically is that many active Mormons at the time, this is a couple years ago, who had LGBTQ family and friends, were forced into a serious crisis of faith, namely, how to reconcile what is nakedly an evil, cruel, mean-spirited, and potentially lethal policy promulgated by your religion with the fact that you yourself may not be evil, cruel, or mean-spirited.
Right.
There are Mormons of this faith that 3.5 years ago felt that they had to turn their backs on nieces and nephews, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, because God's own prophet was telling them they had to. That babies and children of same-sex couples were not worthy to be blessed or baptized in church, could not receive the sacrament, say a prayer, or bear their testimony until they turned 18 and denounced their own parents.
Fuckers.
Sorry.
Evil mother. And there's people that left the church. There were members who wanted to remain Mormons who were so disgusted by this and so heartsick by this that they left their fucking church as a result. And now it just got erased from the whiteboard.
That's right. And yeah, exactly. A mere 41 months later, after all of this damage and pain and suicide, we're all told, never mind. And furthermore, we're supposed to applaud them for their progressivism and mercy.
Right.
In announcing this policy reversal, Apostle Dallin H. Oakes said that this policy is, quote, very positive and will help spread understanding, compassion, and love to, quote, affected families.
Fuckers.
I think infected families probably was a little too on the nose for them.
Right.
Yeah.
So
the amazing thing about this is that they reversed this policy. The quote that I saw going around was that was interesting was a Malcolm X quote. Did you guys see this? There was a Malcolm X quote that was going around that said, I'll paraphrase it because I don't have it in front of me, but it was something along the lines of, if you put a knife 9 inches into my back and you pull it out 6 inches, that's not progress.
that's right.
Right. An arsonist does not get credit for putting out a fire he started.
Or for grabbing your EpiPen on the way out the door of the burning building. Like, are you supposed to say thank you?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so let's talk about why this happened, this change in this policy, why this reversal, and why it didn't.
Do you have an audio version of a spreadsheet? Can you show us that?
Exactly.
An Excel spreadsheet?
If you're righteous Mormon, you have to believe that God implemented this policy and then a mere 41 months later changed his mind. Or did he accomplish whatever policy this goal was meant to achieve? Did the right teen finally commit suicide? Believe what you want, but one thing is indisputable. This policy was an enormous black eye for the church.
Oh my God.
Huge PR.
Big. Yeah, this was an explosion.
That's right. And caused an alarming exodus of more moderate Mormons to both stop attending church, but to also have their names officially removed from the records. So as long as this policy was in place, it was going to continue to bleed an already injured church of revenue and of all-important white membership. So church leadership responded to the only thing that motivates them and the only language loud enough for their hearing aids to register bad quarterly sales reports.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and furthermore, what does this say about the idea of prophecy and revelation? What does it say about the character of Thomas S. Monson, who
What does
had
it say
been
about
an
the character
apostle
of
and
Jesus?
prophet? Right.
Yeah.
Which are all huge problems. How do you square that circle?
Well,
right?
what's funny about this one? Because look, there have been a lot of major policy reversals throughout Mormon history and throughout all churches' history. It's just a thing that happens, and the big ones were things like black people being able to get the priesthood
Right.
and go through the temple, and that sort of things that are on that level, and it was easy at that time for Mormons to say, well, the line that I always heard was, we get these things line upon line and precept upon precept, and maybe the world wasn't ready yet for this to be okay or whatever. You can't say that about a policy that's 3 years old.
Right.
You can't say the world wasn't quite ready yet. The world needed to change more before this policy was brought in.
The world wasn't ready to blame children for the sins of their parents.
And now the Lord has deemed the time to be ripe for this.
That's right.
You can't say that when it's 3 years.
No.
But also remember that these huge policy shifts that had enormous, profound effects on Mormonism and the community, doing away with polygamy in 1890 or 1890. I can't remember. Yeah. 1890, and then allowing blacks to have the priesthood in 1978 are the same thing. It is outside pressures being brought to bear on this fucking regressive institution and forcing it. Right? They're all the same. We're seeing the same thing happen. It just seems like it's been dressed up as a little policy tweak.
Right.
But it's the same thing. They're hemorrhaging members. They're losing money. Look, this is a mall development company that has found a way to be tax-free. Right? So whatever you have to do to protect that tax-exempt status and the bottom line, it's nothing more than that.
Yeah.
It's nothing fucking more than that. They could exist without one more tithing dollar coming in.
That's right.
But,
and back in episode 77, just weeks ago, I talked about why we shouldn't expect to see these kinds of changes. And while I'm shocked that we actually saw one, I was spot on about why this happened. Not to quote myself, but I did say that the church will never change from the inside, but that existential external forces like mass exoduses and bad press can force this institution to change.
Yeah.
But let's be clear about what this policy change is not. Homosexuality is not accepted by Mormons. Gay marriage is not accepted by Mormons. Teen suicides will continue to happen because of the attitude of this church towards LGBTQ teens.
Right.
Yeah.
In fact, if you are a same-sex couple and you would like to have your child given a naming blessing, as we all know, this is a pretty important ritual for Mormons, you have to hand your child off to a group of men who still think you and your partner are abominations, but your baby's okay.
Right.
And they will bless and name it, not you.
But your baby's still a second-class citizen.
Right.
It's just that they can sit in the main room. They can sit in the main cabin. You can't.
I feel like that's a first and a half class citizen. Come on. Let's be real.
Exactly.
Right.
Some
The
animals are
middle
more
of the
equal
bus.
than others.
Right.
So I would just kind of wrap it up with this. I think we should keep this up. If you're out of the church but your name is on the records, maybe consider this a time to take your name off the records and tell them why. If you have friends and family that are troubled by this, that are still in the church, maybe it's time to encourage them to leave and tell them why. They listen to that kind of a language, and nothing else.
It's tricky. It's yeah. I don't know. Figuring out what to do in these scenarios is a tricky one. Getting your name taken off the rolls is even tricky because people's families find out and they can be alienating their families.
Yeah.
But it's probably a good thing to do.
Yeah.
I did it.
Look,
Yeah,
I mean,
we've all done it.
let me wrap up with this. Is it better that this policy has been changed? Yes. From the perspective of harm reduction, this is an improvement.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this should no way exclude the church from what it's done. It shouldn't exonerate the church from the actions it took 3.5 years ago. They just did something so onerous
If anything, it calls into question the entire concept of prophet revelation.
Correct. Exactly. It shows the man behind the curtain is just a fucking awful old geezer.
Yeah.
Who is acting on his, regressive even for the 1950s social ickiness mores.
Right.
Right. It's so revealing of that. And also, I was reading earlier today, there's an estimate somebody made by examining some numbers, and they said they can't guarantee its accuracy, but this is as far as I can tell, this year or 2018 was the largest number of people withdrawing their names from the church ever at over 140,000.
Wow.
Holy cow.
So keep up the good work. I cannot recommend leaving enough. I think it is good for you. It will make your life better and the life of your family better. So I highly, highly recommend it.
All right, I got it out. I got it out of my system.
Yeah, good. Good. All right, well then let's move on.
All right, moving on.
Oh, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hello.
In this world, look, we're about to go and talk about work environments, but this is our work environment, and we put in some effort. We try to do a show every week that is worthy of at least some listening to.
Indeed.
That's right.
And some of the folks that do that listening are appreciative of that.
That's so true, because the good folks at Dr. Pepper can't pay all the bills. So let's thank the people who pitch in.
And
after we lost the Wonder Bible endorsement, we've been really hurting.
That's been killing us. So we are extra grateful for all of our patrons and owe them some thanks. So thanks go out to Jason, to Angela, and Uncle Doug.
Oh shit!
You get to do a surprise saint for Kellum.
Okay, Kellum. I was not expecting this. Kellum, your saint is Saint Anadola.
Yeah.
Of the Fillmore Beaver area of Utah, which is a real place. Unfortunately, I had to take the signs down because people kept stealing them. But Saint Anadella of Fillmore Beaver is the patron saint of hematomas, of file boxes, and of meteorologists.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Why not?
Yeah.
Kellum, so if the weather is such that you get a hematoma, put it in a box and send it to Saint Annapurna, whatever you do.
Put it in a box full of money and send it to us.
That's right. And for the rest of y'all, if you haven't yet joined the ranks of the good folk who enjoy our show and want us to know about it, you can do so. The primary way to do it is to go to howtoheretic.com and click on the patron link, and then that'll take you all the way to Patreon, and you can donate there. Or as Mark likes to talk about, there's a whole star thing. What's the star thing, Mark?
We need a sky full of stars to guide us home.
1,000 points of light.
If you can give us 1,000 points of star on iTunes, your Stitcher, wherever else, please do it. It just helps spread the word. And more word, happier people, better world. We can do this together.
Yes, indeed. 5 stars only.
That's
do
right.
not, even if we don't deserve those 5 stars, that's what you give us.
You do 4, we're coming for you, motherfuckers.
That's right. And we love and appreciate all of you so much.
We sure do.
You're amazing.
Yep.
So let's move on.
Uncle Doug.
Hello.
When you're at work,
Yes.
when you're in the workplace, it's getting harder and harder to do the things that we feel entitled to do.
I know. I can't give those Biden back rubs anymore. My famous Biden back rub. It's bullshit.
And soon we're not going to be able to do anything at all. Dan, what do you think?
Well, I being the only one here who doesn't have a workplace that he doesn't just choose for himself, I don't have much to say on some of those topics. But I did. Here's the thing. As we record this right now, we are in the middle of Mormon General Conference weekend.
That's right.
Which is the time of year every year growing up when I was so happy not to have to go to Mormon church.
That's right.
But then my house was filled with the intonings of old men who all had the same rhythm when they spoke, and it was
It's the most boring
Yeah,
time of the year.
It's a huge thing for Mormons. It's like the World Cup, except it happens twice a year, and there are no brown people.
and oh, excuse me, they got a black one now.
I know.
Yeah,
that
did
was
you
a-
see that?
that was-
done. Dun.
The earth quaked
That's right.
on that one. But one of the, so I was, some of our listeners may know that I have another show that I cheat on this show with. Or maybe this is the hot girlfriend show.
I think we're the mistress.
And the other one's the wife. Anyway, I was doing, for Thank God I'm Atheist, I was there downtown at Temple Square listening to the boring
Live and in
talks.
person.
In the belly of the beast.
Uncle Dan.
That's right. I was live tweeting, which is something I do not know how to do, but I was doing a lot of tweets about it anyway in real time, because I don't know how to use fake time. Anyway, one of the things that I heard, because here's the thing: no matter where you are, even if you're like sitting right front row at General Conference, no matter what, you're going to tune in and out.
Uh-huh.
It's not something that you can pay all of the attention to the whole time.
That's right.
That's physically impossible.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
in my in and out tuning, I heard one of the Mormon old men, the apostles of the Mormon church, tell me, or rather tell his flock, that they should talk about church more. And this was something like, don't be afraid when you're at work, if someone says, how was your weekend, to tell them about how church went for you. That sort of a thing.
And that will be the last time anybody asks you how your weekend was.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And then you'll wonder for years why you eat lunch alone every day.
Yeah, right. And it occurred to me that this is not a Mormon problem. This is a everybody problem.
Yeah.
Everyone in this country runs the risk of, and beyond this country, runs the risk of a coworker who doesn't know to shut up about their religion. In part because so many religions are like explicit about, you need to be getting this word out. You need to be proselytizing. You need to be talking to people about it,
You
or
remember,
Jesus will be mad at you.
Once upon a time, the Mormons really, really pushed this idea of always talking about your religion to the guy next to you on the plane. Remember that?
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah, your mission was never done. Like you were
Yeah.
always a missionary, right?
And that's what this guy was saying. He was saying that, we're all missionaries, and, your job on the front lines is to get them primed, and then you hand them off to the professional missionaries, as Doug once was.
That's right.
Don't worry, we've got 16-year-olds to help you.
I never got rid of my pro status, by the way.
19-year-olds, I guess. That's right. You retired a pro.
They retired my placard.
That's right. So I thought we'd do a little bit of a how-to, which is about talking to coworkers or not talking to coworkers about their religion when they're insistent about it.
I got it. Ready?
Okay, go.
Don't.
Yeah.
All right, moving on.
Here, we solved it.
Yeah.
It's a problem that okay, so there's a couple problems here. This isn't, I'm not saying this is a dig, because this was me too, but especially when you're fresh out of a religion, guess what,
Yeah.
kids? Atheists like to proselytize too.
That's right.
Boy, howdy.
So it's not just a them problem, it's an us problem too. And also, when the religious people start to spout off, it's not always as simple as they say, hey, do you want to join my church? And you say, no, please never mention it again. There's a lot more to it. There are people talking sort of next to you about their religion. There's a lot of nuance to this conversation. And since both of you fellers are somebody's boss,
That's right.
I thought that this would be an interesting conversation for us to have.
Yeah.
So let's just chat. Let's just throw out a scenario, which is
Okay.
that one of our listeners has a coworker that is normally fine, but at least weekly comes up, finds a way to work Jeebus into the conversation. How do we suggest that they handle that?
Well, there are a lot of variables, obviously.
A lot of variables, yes.
But speaking as someone who is a boss, and also is quite outspoken about their atheism and belief system, I have, not had to necessarily correct myself. I've had to be very careful about what I talk about, when I talk about, etc.
Sure.
But on more than a couple occasions, I've had to have conversations with people who were bringing up their beliefs, some of them aligned with mine.
Right.
And on occasion have had to bring HR into the equation.
Right.
Because people, you are not allowed to create a hostile work environment. And that includes, even if everyone in the room believes one thing and one person doesn't,
Right.
you can really put that person into a corner by talking about that. So there are literally legal issues that have to be wrestled with.
Sure.
About that. But I also,
And that's actually the easy part.
that's the easy part.
when it's
Exactly.
when they trip all the way into
Correct.
okay, well, you
A
know
complaint.
what?
When somebody's
Right.
been made so uncomfortable that they come to the boss,
That's right.
then that's usually pretty egregious behavior.
Right.
But you're right. That's the easiest one.
Yeah.
That's like just, hey, you know what, man? You're constantly throwing your Bible at her. You got to stop doing that.
Right, and yeah, you're making the environment uncomfortable. So you have to stop. And but this is tricky because you can't make a policy that just says nobody can talk about things that are important to them.
Mm-hmm.
So
No, absolutely not.
So
Absolutely not.
There needs to be some of this is about the individual coworker, me or my hypothetical atheist coworker, setting their own boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we do that in a way that doesn't create office tension and ugliness and annoyance? Because let me tell you something. If you do it look, there's a lot of ways to do it. You can just say, don't ever talk to me about this again.
Mm-hmm.
I hate Jesus. Leave me alone. I deny the Holy Spirit. Or something like that.
Right.
Like, you can horrify them into shutting up.
Right.
And that could work. But you're not going to have a good relationship with them
Right,
ever.
then it's going to be a lot of friction in the workplace, and
Right.
And
you
it's
know,
not the
that's-
last time that it will come up.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It
It's
may
going
not
to
be.
come up again. I promise.
Yeah, exactly. They will find a passive aggressive way to
Yeah.
get you about it.
Yeah.
So what's
Yeah.
a better way?
Well, so this is really interesting. So I'll preface this by saying I work in a business that, other than the little pocket of when I worked in it in Utah, tends to not be the most religious workplace in the world in the film business,
Right.
right? This is a lot of creative people
Well,
who've run away to join the circus, and many of them left religion to kind of come into. So it's
Yeah, you're working on the wrong films. You need to get into that sweet pure flicks
That's
action.
right.
I
David
would
A.R.
love
White.
so-
Are you listening?
I would give my left nut to work on a David Ayer. That would be so funny. To have Eli critiquing my work directly on. So
Only if it's a
but-
science fiction film set on another planet.
Right.
So we, in the film business, it's a very creative space. It's super collaborative. So there's a lot of room within that. People talk about their motivations and their history and why they're here, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you have to allow for a lot of that.
Right.
So, but there's this really fascinating thing I had to do for IATSE, which is the larger union I'm a part of.
Right.
Where because of the Harvey Weinstein thing, we have to take these, depending on your job classification, you have to take these classes. So how to use scaffolding and lifts safely, electricity, thing, right?
Right.
So you have to certify on that every couple years. And there's a new one because of Harvey Weinstein that's sexual harassment or just harassment in the workplace.
Right.
And so
There wasn't
it's a
one
3-hour. No, there wasn't. Well,
In this scenario, what did Harvey do wrong? Was it A, locking the door, B, locking the windows?
So there was some, but it's codified, right? So
Right.
it's like this 3-hour online course that I was really dreading having to take. And it was little film vignettes that you watched of people behaving in the workplace. And I have to say, it was amazing. Like, I learned a ton from it, right? And, there was a lot of gray area. Like, is this wrong or is this right? And it wasn't just issues of a sexual nature. It was like, browbeating people, talking shit about people with a disability, racism, really, really interesting. And
The whole Trump administration.
yeah, and so there was a huge. I was interested to see that from a legal perspective, they thought there's a lot of gray area.
Yeah.
Where it really got problematic, and this is what I've seen happen in working in the film business when I used to work in it in Utah, and there were a lot of Mormon filmmakers in position of power, is the power dynamic was very frequently abused by religious people.
Right.
Right. That they proselytized pretty openly, and if they weren't doing that, they were being extremely judgmental in very inappropriate ways of people who behaved in ways that that didn't comport with Mormonism. So if you were drunk, if you were hungover, or you slept around, or you weren't, you were an unmarried woman who liked boys, like there were a lot of comments that way, and I think that was very, very common.
Right.
And in non-union filmmaking and these small productions, there really was no HR department, right? You just kind of had to take it. You could leave, or you just had to take it. So I don't know. In that case, I think in those cases where it is, it's not usually a problem if it's someone lower on the food chain talking about stuff, because nobody's directly forced to listen to it, right?
Right.
So you can kind of opt out of the conversation unless you're just stuck in a truck for 12 hours with this guy, right?
You can't always, though. I mean, especially if you're at a desk and they're one cubicle over, you're gonna hear it, and so
Right.
So and there is an interesting moment where it tips from mild annoyance over into harassment.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
harassment. And religious people, because they believe very, very, very deeply in a thing, cannot see it as It's very hard for them to understand that's harassing. They think they're giving you a truth.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're desperate for you to accept it. So, to me, that's deranging, right? They have some fail-safes in their brain have been switched off by these ideas.
Right.
And so I think, look, I think it's perfectly okay for someone to say, I went on a mission and I'm a Mormon, and that's part of their story. Like, it's completely okay until it gets into and you must be too.
Right.
And that's when you need to, they're trained to ignore social cues.
Yeah, and
Right?
that's the interesting trick is when the social cue thing breaks down, and you can't just subtly indicate to them, I'm uncomfortable with this.
Yeah.
And that's when I think here's the problem: a lot of people are not comfortable with directness,
Right.
and they're not comfortable with being direct,
Right.
But
Right.
it's kind of what's called for in this situation.
Well, and I look at it the same way I would look at someone in the workplace telling a racially insensitive or sexually explicit joke.
right.
That you don't necessarily have to say, "Hey, you're being racist, knock it off." You can say, like, "Hey, listen, I don't think we should be talking about religion in the workplace. Not everybody feels the same way.
Right.
Let's keep that out of here, guys. Hey, that joke's not okay." You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
You should say something. How you go about it, if you keep it really general and say, "I really don't like when we talk religion or we talk sex in the workplace,"
Mm-hmm.
but you should say something.
Yeah, I think, and I think you made a really interesting distinction there, Doug, which is if you make it about yourself rather than about them, it will probably go over a little bit better.
Right.
Meaning, like, if you don't say you're an idiot for believing that, or you're the racist. If you don't point the finger at them, if you just say, "Hey, look, in my personal thing, I'm not comfortable with this kind of talk in the workplace.
It's sticky, guys. Let's not have that in here."
So let's so maybe we can just look. I'm fine with you talking about like how much fun you had at your church picnic, but I'm not fun with you talking about theology here in the workplace. And that's
making demands of other people.
Right.
Making insisting that they should live as in a way that you approve of. So
let's not pretend that those demands don't come masked as not demands. So like for instance, a lot of the time it's going to be things like, your coworker has a baby, and then everybody's like, "Oh, you were so blessed. Oh, God has blessed you so much." Sam, don't you think that It's beautiful how God has blessed them. And it's like,
Right.
I'm pulled into this,
Yeah.
but I'm not being asked much. You know what? They're not saying join my church.
Right.
So it's just and it sounds super dickish to say, no, God didn't bless you with that baby.
Take out your Planned Parenthood membership card.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So like these can be tricky waters, and
Yes.
that can be a good time for you to say, yeah, what a beautiful baby. And then later take the other person aside and just say, hey, don't pull me into those things.
Listen, and to your earlier point, Dan, I have myself on more than a few occasions had to edit other atheists.
Yeah.
And people who were
Yes.
a liberal leaning politically, when I knew there was someone in the room who was religious or who was conservative, and been like, hey guys, let's not do politics right now, you guys. Let's knock this off.
Hey, listen, I've been that dickhead. I've been that atheist asshole at work because
we all have.
because it's
Yeah.
fun. And
Yeah.
you know, it's one of those things where if the other person starts talking about religion, it can be delightful
Right.
to just burst that bubble.
Exactly.
Right.
But
And
it's
I-
just
I
it's
did-
just not good for the workplace. That's not you're going to
Right.
create an unhealthy
It's
environment.
not the right place for it.
And you're going to and you may be creating a hostile work
That's right.
environment. That's never good.
And
there's
it-
never
right.
a time when creating a hostile work environment is a good or acceptable thing.
And there are places during the course of a work day that conversation might be totally fine. If you're sitting down to lunch or you're traveling or you're one-on-one and someone's just like, well, I understand you're an atheist. What's that about? Have at it.
If they ask,
Of course.
but yeah, I
It's
mean,
a-
but
it-
even
it-
then, it's
that-
still tricky.
It's a bit tricky,
It's-
but consent
that's a
is
consent
a big part
question.
of this. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Is if someone is asking, it's different than if you are just offering unsolicited. And, I've had to be much more careful, as you guys were saying, since I've become kind of the boss, right? Since
Right.
I'm in charge of a large group of people. I have to be really, really careful about the things I say like that. Not because I'm worried about, HR or lawsuit. I just don't want to be a dick.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right? I just don't want to force people into uncomfortable situations that they don't want to be in. So going back a bit, I don't know if you guys saw another thing that came out of this weekend's Mormon General Conference on this subject
Oh,
was be relentless. The people in your life who say they don't want to be Mormons or left the church or don't want to hear about it, be relentless. Hound them.
Come at me, bro.
Throw your arms.
Come at me, bro.
There was a quote.
Add how
There
to
was a
heretic.
quote. There was a quote that said, "Throw your arms around their neck and kiss them." So
Don't do that.
this is not getting better. And
No.
I'm just talking about the Mormon specific thing. It's
Yep.
not going to get better. And Mormons, the only social cue Mormons ever seem to notice is like a double-handed swing from a sledgehammer.
Right.
So you can say 100 times, "No, thanks, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you. So no, I'm not going to come to your social thing. No, thank you.
Right.
I'm good. I have plans Saturday."
right.
And they're relentless. And sometimes you have to push, as I've done a few times in the past. I'm like, "Hey, man, I've told you 10 times. Would you back the fuck up?"
Right. And
And
sometimes
the-
you
and-
got to get that forceful.
yeah, and it
And
sucks
then
to
they
have to
gasp.
do that. Yeah, they gasp.
They
exactly.
gasp.
Yeah.
Right. You're so rude.
I will sometimes put and this is very, very rare in my life, but I have been known to put a preemptive hammer down hard, just so
Right.
that the environment is clear. For instance, there was one time I was in a play, and this was it was a community theater production, and in Utah, community theater often means everybody is Mormon or
Right.
there's one non-Mormon or whatever. And
Right.
so, we were prepping for the show. We were in dress rehearsals, which meant that we were about to open the show. And one of the very well-meaning woman, and strangely a lesbian woman who was not Mormon but was a Christian, said, "Well, she just sort of offhandedly said, well, we're when we have our prayer before every performance." And before she could even finish her sentence, I was like, "Nope, we're not doing that." And she was like, "What? No, we're not going to do that. Nope, definitely not."
Right.
And I'm in no higher position of power than she was, but it was just a matter of like, in part because I know that I can be that forceful. I'm comfortable with that level of confrontation, and I know other people in the group who wouldn't have been comfortable and would have just sat through that prayer and just been made uncomfortable every damn night and whatever.
Right.
So I was just like, feel free to pray on your way here. Pray on your own time. That's all cool. We're definitely not doing a cast prayer. And she was like, well, every place else that I've ever worked, we've done a cast prayer. Okay. Not here, though.
Exactly.
That's not happening.
Super duper. Great story.
And that's the thing is I think that we don't advocate the confrontation on this podcast, obviously, but I do think that people proselytizing or pushing their beliefs too hard in the workplace should be treated like people saying racially insensitive things in the workplace.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's something that can create that level of hostility and discomfort and can make people feel really, really shitty. So it doesn't belong there. So you just got to get it out.
If you see a guy on the street yelling Bible quotes at a family, have at it, man.
Yeah, go.
You've been training all
Yeah.
your life for this.
Yeah, exactly. You can go after that person,
Yeah.
or like some godbotherer is yelling at a party.
You get some.
You sharpen those knives and have at it. But in the work environment, that ain't right.
That's right.
All right,
Yeah,
fellas.
I just think it's try to make sure everybody can do the task in a comfortable space.
Yeah.
And, but I would say if somebody is proselytizing at work, if somebody's being really pushy about it, don't let it slide once.
That's right.
Right? Always comment. Yeah. Always say something, because every time you let it slide, they're going to take, give them an inch, they'll take a mile.
Yeah.
So always say something. You don't have to be a dick every time. Just say, hey, man, that's a little much for me.
Yeah, let's
that's
keep
a little
this
much
out
for
of
here.
let's not talk about politics or religion, guys. It's too sticky.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad that we solved yet another world problem.
We did it.
And with that, let's move on.
Wahoo!
Well, friends, that's it for this week's show.
Hey, if you've got a shirt made out of a unique material, send us an email at howto@howtoheretic.com.
Or if you're from the legal department of Dr. Pepper, please leave us a voicemail at 903-88-HOW-TO, which is 903-884-6986. And you can also tweet I'm a Pepper at HowToHeretic on Twitter.
Yes. Thanks again to our patrons. We love you the most.
And thanks to our patroness mostess, Cody Layton, for editing the show.
Yes, and thank all of you for tuning in.
Bye, friends.
Adios.